So honestly, I'm not too sure how I even like this retcon, cause potentially if what actually happens in this crazy comic is true, it could actually change Spider-Man's lore and history forever, and Wolverine may be the culprit and everything behind it. Though as always, welcome back to the Hero Informer. Firstly, we pick up with Logan doing what he does best, just being in complete savage mode, slashing and clawing and destroying everything around him. But here's actually for a good reason, as he is in Berlin, Germany, fighting against the forces of Hydra. Not only that, but to meet with one specific man, a man named Bill Branscombe. Now, Bill here is a very minor character, but what he is a super spy, basically a agent for hire. If you need someone to infiltrate somewhere or to get information about someone else, you hire this guy. Though he isn't here to fight Logan, no, he called him here for a very specific purpose. Because Bill here has got his hands on a little bit of information, something that could be super damaging in the wrong hands. A little thing called the Janus directory. Now at first that doesn't sound too ominous, but essentially it is a master database of the world's double agents, meaning every person who has ever been a spy or working for someone else or infiltrating somewhere, all of that information, their names, identity, who they really are working for, is all written down in this directory. And even Logan himself, over the years of being morally aligned in different places and times, from being a good guy and bad guy, even working with the Red Skull at one point, you know, he is definitely within the names in this directory and what he has done. Though at first Logan didn't even believe it was real, he thought it was a myth. But not only is it very real, as Bill confirms, but S.H.I.E.L.D. itself had his hands on it. Now, S.H.I.E.L.D. itself has kind of been disbanded for a very long time, 7 years in real life. But there lies the problem, because S.H.I.E.L.D. is disbanded and, there's no one actively keeping this information. It's essentially the equivalent in the intel world of a loose nuke. All this information is just out there. The bottom line being, if this information, this database gets into the public and into daylight, a lot of lives are going to be ruined and even more will get ended. And Logan, not only being a hero himself, but also in the shoes of being an agent before, knows what this could do to some people and vows to get the information for himself to discard or do whatever he's going to do with it. Though in a less serious note, we pick up a week later in New York City with Spider-Man swinging through the streets of New York because he is late for a date. And unfortunately, no, not with Mary Jane, but his new love interest, Shay. But honestly, I don't think I've ever met one person who actually liked Shay. Most people are usually just indifferent or downright dislike her and hate her, regardless, as they are kind of, in a talking stage and going out. And the fact that Peter hasn't told her that he's, Spider-Man, he still has to excuse all of his late absences and early leavings and all of that. But Shay thinks she's cracked the code onto why Peter's life is such a dumpster fire and the way that it is. Simply, like a lot of problems that people face, it stems from their childhood, more specifically his parents, who Peter never really talks about, because Peter himself doesn't really know too much about his parents' history, especially in the way they died. Now, of course, he knows that they were spies and even goes on to tell her as much, saying that he only really doesn't talk about his parents because they were super spies who were killed in the line of duty. Which, of course, Shay here, she just thinks he's joking, because who just says that, oh yeah, my parents were super spies and they died in the line of duty, so... But honestly, in the Marvel Universe, that's not the most craziest thing that could happen to a person, especially when you have aliens, magic, demons, and everything else going on within the Marvel Universe that is completely real. Being super spies is probably on a lower level of crazy things out there. But in this case, Parker was actually telling the truth. But for right now, she doesn't know the whole truth about Peter Parker, especially with him living this double life as Spider-Man, as just then Wolverine arrives and grabs Spider-Man to go on a mission together. Peter at first rejecting and saying, no, I'm on a date here, I can't, just leave. But once Wolverine makes it clear that this is superhero business, Peter has no choice but to zip out of there and make any type of excuse to go on his way. Which again is just more of his Parker luck, not only being late to the meeting itself, but having to leave early, all because of his other life. And speaking of that other life, we see Wolverine and Spider-Man finally arrive at an offshore abandoned S.H.I.E.L.D. facility base that is not only completely wiped off of the books, but not a lot of people even know this is here, even though in this base there is a giant S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. As they arrive, Wolverine even goes on to say that the whole reason he even brought Spider-Man in the first place is sure, Spider-Man is pretty strong and formidable in a battle himself, but the intelligence that he was after. Because to even get this information in this directory, the Janus directory, it's hiding behind a firewall and Spider-Man has to crack through because in Wolverine's own words, he's a dork, and that's exactly what they need here. Though Spider-Man is a dork with amazing senses, specifically a spider sense, as just then it goes off as an attack rings through hitting Wolverine, and we see the introduction of two of Peter's and Logan's respective villains, Kraven the Hunter and Omega Red, which is kind of so random that they would be teaming up out of every other villain that could have showed up. Of course, the only reasonable explanation of them even being here is they are also after the same directory to get all this information and intel for whatever purposes the villains have. So the heroes jump in, but instead now we need to switch opponents. Spider-Man going after Omega Red and Wolverine going after Kraven the Hunter. Which, I mean, this is kind of a lopsided battle, especially in Wolverine's area. Kraven is pretty cunning and he's strong and he's a pretty good hunter, but there's not much that Kraven realistically would be able to do against Wolverine. On the flip side though, we see Spider-Man just having a little bit more trouble against Omega Red as he is eventually caught by his tendrils and being choked out. Peter eventually being able to wiggle himself free, and this whole time kind of taking the situation lightly, with even Omega Red making note of this, saying, "Pathetic. Kraven the Hunter told me you would be more of a formidable opponent." Yet Spider-Man, after hitting him with a devastating kick, he basically confirms that yeah, he can be pretty formidable and strong when he really wants to. But even on Wolverine's end, Kraven the Hunter is having no better luck trying to best him, as in their scuffle he just gets kicked into a jet, exploding, which, I mean, Kraven the Hunter, you know, he doesn't have any type of super high level durability. Sure, he might be stronger and more enhanced technically than just a baseline human, being able to tank attacks from Spider-Man and other heroes and villains throughout the years, but surely almost splitting a jet in half and exploding do more damage long term and put him out for the entirety of the fight. But we see that isn't the case here, as it's almost instantly he is able to get back up, holding down new weaponry in the form of a rocket launcher. Now Wolverine, if he got hit with this, sure, you know, he wouldn't be out forever, you know, he would heal and wouldn't die, but it would be painful, and he doesn't have the speed of Spider-Man. He can't just whip around and flip out of the range of a rocket launcher as easily. So Logan decides to do the next best thing, you know, using his sharp, almost indestructible metal claws to deflect a shooting rocket launcher. Which, I mean, the logic and physics behind that kind of really doesn't make sense, but hey, it's cooler just seeing Logan just, you know, deflect and parry a rocket launcher. But it doesn't come without its consequences, as once the RPG hits the debris from up above, rocks and boulders all come crashing down on top of Logan, completely knocking him out for who knows how long. But the bigger problem is he's buried alive. All his senses are seemingly screaming, wailing for him to get free and get out of there. Though as he is trying to dig through the rock after just waking up, he seemingly hits a wooden barrier, which wouldn't really make sense under a pile of rock. Because no, not anymore, it doesn't feel like he's buried under a bunch of rubble and rock, but more so in a wooden box, a coffin. As you've seen Wolverine breaking free from the coffin and being buried alive, clearly a reference from Kraven's Last Hunt storyline, where, you know, Spider-Man went through the same thing. Speaking of Spider-Man, we see what's happening from his perspective, questioning, wait, where did everybody go? Where did Kraven the Hunter and the villains go? And where is he? As you see him completely change into Wolverine's past, you know, when he just got free of the Weapon X program. Spider-Man even going on to say that he feels different, angry, feral, and instead of shooting webs, he has the same indestructible adamantium claws like Wolverine did. Now yes, while you might be a little confused, you can also clearly see that Spider-Man and Wolverine swapped histories. Each are reliving a retelling of some of their most horrific and downright tragic past and memories. To Wolverine finding the woman he loved murdered by Green Goblin, to Spider-Man being a Japanese ninja as Logan did at one point, and so on and so forth. Them even slowly coming to a realization separately about what is going on. Peter realizing that the things he is experiencing, these almost memories, no, this isn't his memories, this happened to Logan. And how Kraven must have hit them with some sort of hallucination gas to not only distort them, but to weaken them, so while the heroes are weakened, the villains can go in for the kill. But now that they know this, they can also fight against this, instantly saying, no, this doesn't have to go down like that. This isn't real, this is the past, and it's not the future. Memories cannot hurt us unless we let them. Just then, instantly breaking free of the illusions, hallucinations, or mind games, whatever you prefer to use. But using tricks like this isn't really Kraven's MO, and at the same time, it's not that far-fetched to think they maybe didn't come alone and there's someone else within Spider-Man's rogue gallery who is a self-proclaimed master of illusions. Spider-Man even realizing this same fact and leaving Wolverine to fight against the two as he goes to find out the culprit behind all of this illusions and hallucination stuff, finding Mysterio himself. Now Mysterio, or Quentin Beck, in more recent years has largely retired as being a villain, but now for whatever reason it seems like he's back in his tights and costume, right back to being the villain he once was. Him going on to say that I certainly tried to retire, though I was made an offer I just couldn't refuse, seemingly by Kraven and Omega Red or whoever they are working for. Though Spider-Man doesn't really want to play his games and instantly goes for the knockout hit, cracking his fishbowl dome and knocking him out, or seemingly so. Because of course, Mysterio is the master of illusion, so with him on the playing field, no one really knows what is true or what could really be happening. So really just keep that in mind for what's going to go forward. Because as Spider-Man eventually gets to the computers, the thing he was here to do, and crack the code to get to the real files and part of the directory, eventually Peter, being the genius he is, he seemingly is able to get in and look through each and every record that has ever been for every secret agent, all while Logan is outside fighting Omega Red and Kraven solo by himself. But like I said with Peter, he has access to almost every agent and whatever missions and data they have been on, including his parents, who were secret agents themselves at one point. Peter at first trying to convince himself that no, he doesn't have time to stroll down memory lane with mommy and daddy because he's here for a very specific mission. But at the same time, Logan is out there keeping the other villains occupied. So maybe he does have a little time, and he only knows so little about his parents, more specifically about their deaths and how they died. As he pulls it up, and no, it's not just a file, but an actual final transmission, a video surveillance on the plane where it seemingly all went down. Richard Parker, his father, and Mary Parker, his mother, on whatever secret spy mission they were on for S.H.I.E.L.D. or whoever else. Though in the video we can see a figure lurking in the background. Someone is aboard their ship, someone that isn't supposed to be there, and with seemingly murderous intent. This mysterious person having a very specific silhouette, with Peter recognizing him as Logan himself, Wolverine, which is a crazy revelation if this is true, because remember, Mysterio is on the field, so anything here has to be taken with a grain of salt. Either way though, Peter here for all intents and purposes believes this is what actually happened as he is watching it with his own very two eyes. Even as his father questions Logan, what is he doing here on his plane, Logan simply says two words: his job. And you might say, sure, if this is true, why would Wolverine, Logan, kill Spider-Man's parents? The real simple answer is Logan has had a long history. As I said in the beginning, he even worked with Hydra and Red Skull for a little bit. So Logan is no saint, and of course he didn't even know who Peter's parents were at the time, Peter being a little child by the time his parents died. So to Logan, these would just be some random agents that he would have killed. And with Wolverine's long kill list, this is just a drop in the bucket. Heck, Logan might not even remember these people even if Spider-Man did bring them up. Back outside on the battlefield, we see that Logan is all fired up. He still has a lot of gas left in the tank. Though it seems like the villains here didn't, as for whatever reason they retreated or left, leaving Wolverine alone here with all of the destruction, still itching for a fight that he's going to get, as just then Spider-Man kicks the wall down, hitting Logan in the back, declaring that he is going to kill him. And for Spider-Man, there's only a couple ways to get him to the point of actually declaring or wanting to straight up murder someone, hero or not. One of the main ways is going after his loved one, someone he cares about, in this case his very parents. And honestly, Logan is the best person for Spider-Man to declare this on, because sure, Spider-Man might be stronger than Logan, faster, physically superior, but Logan's healing factor is essentially going to make him a punching bag for Spider-Man in his rage-fueled mode to dish out everything he can, trying to kill Logan. Though that is a fight and battle we're not going to see here, as this issue and video comes to a close. As always, this was AJ here at The Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.